It is a pleasure to be back with you today. Our opening words are from Susan Moon's book, This is Getting Old, Zen Thoughts on Aging with Humor and Dignity. She writes, "It annoys me when people say, even if you're old, you can still be young at heart, in order to cheer up old people. Hiding inside this well-meaning phrase is a deep cultural assumption that it is bad to be old and to be young is good. What's wrong with being old at heart? I'd like to know. Old at heart. Doesn't it have a beautiful ring? Wouldn't you like to be loved by people whose hearts have practiced loving for a long time? Let us gather today with minds and hearts open to the miracle of life. Let us celebrate the wonder of biology, spirit, and destiny that brought us to this point in our lives. May we connect heart to heart this hour, honoring each other's inherent worth and dignity as we grow older together, one moment at a time. And now we will light our chalice and we can all recite the very familiar words. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it light. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant.
We go to Melanie, who has gifted us with her presence many times, and we're so happy to have her back again to lead the service.
Thank you. Now we'll have a time of reflection. So if you want to just get comfortable in your chair, settle in, feel yourself part of the earth, breathe deeply. And I'll do a reading and then invite you to reflect for a moment. The following is a passage from President Jimmy Carter's book, The Virtues of Aging, which he wrote when he was 74. He wrote, "In an unfortunate interview with Playboy magazine during my presidential campaign in 1976, I quoted a verse from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and admitted that I had been guilty of feeling lust for other women before I married Rosalind. This created a wave of publicity, and I dropped 15 points in public approval and almost lost the election. In 1995, I was signing my volume of poetry in a bookstore near Harvard University. There was a long line, and I was trying to sign the books as rapidly as possible and still make eye contact and exchange a few polite words with each customer. One attractive woman, perhaps in her late 30s, said, 'Mr. President, I remember that interview you had with Playboy magazine.' Everyone got quiet. And then she added, 'If you still have lust in your heart, I'm available.' I blushed beet red while the crowd roared with laughter. I have to admit that at my age, it's an encounter I remember with pleasure." Notice that President Carter qualified his comment with, "at my age." Consider whether you have used or heard others use "at my age" or "at their age" in reference to something sexual. Was there a tinge of judgment? A sense that perhaps you or someone else were dressing, dancing, speaking, or behaving in a manner inappropriate for a particular age? Visualize a reframe that celebrates the inherent goodness of sexuality throughout our entire lives. How might it feel to be in a society and in a community and in a family, unencumbered by concerns about age limits on attraction, attractiveness, function, or pleasure? Please reflect for a few moments before the music begins. Early 2012, the Sexuality and Aging Consortium at Widener University, of which I am co-president and one of the founders, was contacted by a major New York ad agency that had created a 30-second video public service announcement, also called a PSA, to promote safer sex for older adults. The agency hoped the video would go viral on social media and would send consumers, healthcare providers, and others to our website for sexuality education about safer sex. The PSA noted that in Florida alone, sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, had increased among seniors by 71% in the past 10 years. The problem wasn't limited to Florida, by the way. Nationwide, between 2006 and 2010, the rates of STIs among adults over 55 rose by up to 135%. And in the past 10 years, the number of cases has doubled even from there, especially among people who are widowed and divorced. The deadline for the PSA's social media release loomed, and we didn't have time to work with the university's approval and website design process. So I decided to create a site specifically for it called safersexforseniors.org. If you want to look it up later, it's safersex4seniors.org. As an online home for the PSA video, for fact sheets, and a way for our experts to answer visitor questions. Helping me were about a dozen experts in sexuality, aging, and healthcare. The website launched just before news of the PSA was released, and within 5 days, the video had over 100,000 views. Within a month, it had been viewed more than 1 million times. I was contacted by media across the US, in Britain, Canada, France, and India. The attention was exciting and heady until the reality of the media's perspective on older adult sexuality became depressingly, but not surprisingly, evident. Lee Woodruff of CBS This Morning gave one of the few objective descriptions of the PSA. She said, "At first glance, the PSA seems like something taken straight from the pages of the Kama Sutra. A rapid succession of fully clothed men and women are seen posing in more than 24 sexual positions. Eventually, the video reveals a startling statistic and a message for sexually active seniors. I would add that the adults were on a theater stage and there was cheesy disco music playing, and the seniors were laughing as they kind of danced into these kind of awkward positions that two bodies can get themselves into. In huge yellow letters, the STI statistic is followed by, there are many ways to do it, but only one way to do it safely. Use a condom," followed by our website's URL. Now, we saw the PSA as a celebration of older adult sexual expression that is both safe and fun. But the media mostly express preconceived notions about appropriate behavior for older adults by using headlines like these in online and television remarks. "Safe sex for seniors video will make you want to put your grandparents on timeout." Could safe sex video cause seniors to break a hip? You cannot unsee this safe sex for seniors video PSA. And watch senior citizens get pornographic for a safe sex PSA. One advertising industry expert wrote, "The poses in this PSA really make me uncomfortable. Don't make me think of grandma that way." But why not? Why is it taboo to think of our parents or our grandparents enjoying their sexuality, or our own aging selves doing the same? Our attitudes are deeply ingrained and are affected by our own hopes and fears, by our concept of sexuality, by our comfort with our own and others' sexuality, by our experiences with aging relatives, and by our own experiences. Our attitudes are also affected by ageist perspectives in the predominant culture that grant younger people sexual privilege. They are seen as inherently more attractive and desirable, more sexually fit, and more deserving of sexual pleasure than older people. Age-related sexual privilege hurts everyone, from the 24-year-old celebrity getting Botoxed before wrinkles appear to adults in their 40s who fear they only have a few good sexual years left. It hurts older adults who have to search hard to see people like themselves in romantic films, in erotic books, or in porn. It hurts lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender seniors who may be ridiculed, abused, or neglected by caregivers who take umbrage with their sexual identities. Poor self-image, lack of social support, loneliness, and abuse are some of the many ways age-related sexual privilege causes harm, and much work remains to be done. Now, some of that work is happening via podcasts, such as one called Our Better Half, which is led by two sex educators, and a new book published by the Unitarian Universalist Association's Skinner House is titled The Stonewall Generation, LGBTQ Elders on Sex, Activism, and Aging by Dr. Jane Fleischman. Dr. Fleischman happens to be another member of the Sexuality and Aging Consortium. In 2019, the UUA published Our Whole Lives, Sexuality Education for Older Adults, which I wrote. The past few years have seen more good films featuring older actors and an excellent documentary called Gen Silent about the hard choices facing gay and trans seniors when their health and living situations must change. What's missing are new materials for healthcare professionals, and that can be traced to a general lack of interest among providers and funders of these videos. The Sexuality and Aging Consortium failed to interest producers in updating a useful 1992 short film called The Heart Has No Wrinkles, which tells the story of a couple whose intimate relationship is a subject of ridicule at their assisted living facility. As noted by the film's narrator, no matter how vibrant or beautiful they may have been once, the aged are often pitied, patronized, or desexualized. They are often left out of decisions that impact their lives, and these decisions may result in the loss of independence, privacy, social support, and sexual expression. A video that highlights the loss of independence is called A Rose by Any Other Name, the story of a 79-year-old woman dating Mr. Morris, who lives down the hall in a nursing home. Their relationship is intimate and consensual, but Rose's family is so threatened by the couple's unseemliness, as they called it, that they tell Rose she and Mr. Morris cannot have any contact. Rose keeps fighting for her rights, but once her boyfriend is isolating from her, he sinks into severe depression. The sad truth is that while this film was made in 1979, adult children of nursing home residents still remain the biggest hurdle to resident sexual freedom. Their attitude is often, if my parent needs assisted living, they are not in any shape to be having sexual relationships. To help change such attitudes, I wrote a workshop called Family Matters in the OWL for Older Adults. One of the objectives is to foster conversations between seniors and their adult children about sexual rights and privacy. Like other issues that we champion as Unitarian Universalists, sexuality and aging are matters of social justice and inclusivity. Author Harry Getzov interviewed hundreds of adults over 70, asking what they've learned about life and how they view themselves. In a book titled If My House Had No Mirrors, he asks, how old do you feel? These seniors invariably said they feel just as vibrant as they did in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And yet, look at the synonyms we have for the word old: ancient, out of date, broken down, obsolete, exhausted, dilapidated, senile, dried up, done. Older adults are not done simply by virtue of age. We have too much to contribute, to share, to experience, and to enjoy to be done. We all have sexual identities, beliefs, values, memories, and feelings, And we may continue to enjoy sexual activity, solo or partnered, well into our 80s and 90s. And yet, the language we use reflects the discomfort some people feel with older adult sexuality. Several people asked me after reading the title of this sermon, Jaguars, Sugar Daddies, and Lonely Hearts, Shattering the Myths of Sexuality and Aging, whether I meant cougars instead of jaguars. It's a good question because cougar is the more common term. In dating vernacular, pumas are financially secure straight women in their 30s seeking partners in their 20s. Cougars are in their 40s seeking partners in their 20s. And jaguars are over 50, also seeking partners in their 20s. Why the 20s? Well, likely because of a myth that sexual enthusiasm and endurance require youthfulness. Sugar daddies are wealthy older men who support much younger sexual partners. A common assumption about sugar daddies and jaguars is that younger partners are mostly interested in their older partner's wealth, because what else could they offer? But consider our opening words by Susan Moon, who asked, wouldn't you like to be loved by people whose hearts have practiced loving for a long time? Repeatedly, research finds that older adults describe their romantic and sexual lives as richer and more satisfying than at earlier stages in their lives. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're more sexually active. Rather, they're happier with who they are and with the level of sexual expression and intimacy that they now experience, or don't, because many older people choose not to be sexually active. The first step in changing attitudes about aging and sexuality is to reframe stereotypes and assumptions. In 1938, Harvard University began following 268 male undergraduates in what has become the longest running longitudinal study of human development in history. The goal of the study was to discern factors that contribute most to human flourishing. From the start, the males in the study, now grant you this was 1938 when it started, shied away from answering specific questions about their sexual activity. So the researchers focused on emotional intimacy, warmth, and mutual attachment. Interestingly, the findings indicate that marriages bring more fulfillment after age 70 than at any other point in life. 85-year-old Robert said the pleasures of his second marriage are, quote, really just being together, sharing each other's lives and our children's lives, snuggling on cold nights. 81-year-old Jim called his wife the essence of his life, describing their relationship as a lovely partnership. She called them best friends sharing a physical relationship, even if the physical aspect isn't quite what it was when they were younger. The main thing, she said, is that I adore him more now than I ever did. We laugh a lot. We laugh at ourselves. I don't know how we got here, but it's wonderful. These emotions run counter to the stereotype of older adults as lonely hearts, people stuck alone at home with no intimacy and only fading memories of past loves and desire. As I said earlier, there remains work to be done to ensure that older adults have the freedom to be sexually active and as expressive as they might wish to be. One place to start is that while we fight for sexual reproductive rights for the young, we must also ensure that seniors have access to healthcare clinicians specially trained in older adult sexual health. It means that while we fight to retain same-sex marriage rights, we also fight for affordable housing for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender seniors who might not have adult children to provide and shelter for them. It means that we must work to eliminate the bias and discrimination faced by transgender adults who report higher rates of disability, general poor health, depression, anxiety, loneliness, and suicidal ideation. The social justice of age-related sexual privilege also means that when 50% of people in their 80s and 60% of people in their 90s have some form of dementia, we advocate for their sexual rights and for rights and concerns of their partners, combating the assumption that if our minds go, our sexuality does too. We can also start putting an end to age-related sexual privilege by no longer using cute and old in the same sentence. Older adults holding hands, cuddling, and kissing aren't cute. We are mature adults expressing caring and intimacy. That should be honored, as it is in this poem by Clarence Major titled Aging Together. I watch myself aging in your eyes. My heart in my chest sits high on stilts and leans forward for the sunlight that comes down through my ribs at mid-morning. It is a still hopeful heart. My face still has two sides, and my hands each have a pocket to sleep in, just like yours. You stand near an old stone doorway, shading your eyes from the sun. The church bells are ringing again. Each ding or dong has its own personality. Across the way, two women stand at a gate, feeding pigs. The pigs grunt and grind, watching us. All night, the majestic church bells ring, setting a rhythm for our sleep, as you sleep peacefully beside me and I beside you. In the morning, we climb all the way to the top of the hill for a panoramic view. We see our village below by the bay. The eagle with feet full of possibility of stars makes so much possible for us, but is our own love for each other that makes the difference. We are growing older gracefully together. We've taken to aging like a dog to its collar. Now recall the list of synonyms for old that I read earlier in this sermon. Those words all had negative connotations. And in the spirit of our first principle, I offer another set of synonyms and encourage you to gain strength from them as you advance in years and as you become mature, seasoned, experienced, skilled, venerable, well-traveled, legendary, wise, wanted, sensual, sexual, loved, and beloved. May it be so. May you see that you are loved today at whatever age and life stage you find yourself. And may you know that you will continue to be loved tomorrow and all the tomorrows to come. Blessed be.